You want to take a picture, Rose? Excellent. Yeah, it should be good. You see it's up and up? Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. Oh, yeah. Because no, you can't redline the signal, otherwise it will clip and it will be unintelligible, and nobody can able to hear. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing fantastic today. How are the pierogies? Delicious? Yummy? That's funny because I share a video on Insta and on social media about the fact that we're going to have pierogies and an independence town hall today, and people were essentially saying that I was too fat and saying some nasty words, but that's what we're dealing, I guess. My name is Max. For those who know me, I run the Freedom Calendar, and I will be streaming this event and doing the sound for today's event. And just to start with, I just want to see, please raise your hand if this is your first town hall on independence. Don't be shy. Oh, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the very bottom, at the very end. That's good. And that's what we get, anywhere from about 10 to 25%, sometimes 30% of people are coming for the first time to Independence Meet. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. That was appreciated for coming here to this event. So this is one of the town halls from Let's Talk Alberta with Chris Scott and many volunteers. And I want to thank everybody who's volunteering today and all the canvassers as well who were braving the very cold winter to get signatures. That was very awesome. And Let's Talk Alberta it's another subset of events, and the goal is to basically talk about independence, about the benefits, and to raise questions if you have questions that you might not necessarily agree with the concept of Alberta independence. If you agree, that's fine. If you don't agree, that's fine too. The purpose is just to talk about independence in general and trying to have a discussion. So that is what Let's Talk Alberta is all about. Before going to the program, well, I'd like to tell you that there's a lot of pierogies back there in the back. If you want to get some pierogies back and you want to bring it home for your wife or husband, if you want to put into lunch boxes, there are some plates you can use to bring food tomorrow, which is going to be very interesting. So don't be shy to get some pierogies back home. Also, I know that some people are watching online, which I'm really thankful for that. I think we're going to be in Lloydminster on Thursday. We're going to have Chris Scott, obviously, Leighton Gray, as well as Tanner O'Day. The both we're going to be in Lloydminster, and obviously that show will be live streamed as well. And also there's going to be a fundraiser at the Whistle Stop when I have the best cinnamon buns. Hey, Chris? The best cinnamon buns ever at the Whistle Stop? Yes. That's going to be on Saturday. I will be streaming that as well and doing the sound over there. So I want to see all my internet friends over there. That's going to be fantastic to see. So without further ado, so the program is we're going to have some speakers. We have John Riel over here, Kathy Flett, that you've probably seen it before, and Chris Scott. And then we'll have the intermission for about 5-10 minutes, and then it's going to be the Q&A. As again, if the goal is to have discussions here. If you don't agree with the subject of independence, that's fine too. If you agree, that's fine. The important thing is the dialogue part, okay? Sounds good for you guys over there? Also, just FYI, we have 4 exits, emergency exits. We have one over there, or right over there, and one at the back here. The washrooms are by this exit over there. That's going to be on the right, male and female, obviously. And you're going to see the washrooms are over there as well, too. So if you want to help yourself, feel free to do so. So, without further ado, we're going to have our first speaker, who is John Riel, right? Did I pronounce it right? John Riel? Yeah. Gotcha. So I met him in Ponoka, and doing some town hall meetings over there with his wife, and he's been in the hero of ex-military, right? You are an ex-military. You were in the military? Yes. Okay. So I never heard him speaking before, so I'm gonna be very interested in what he's about to say from his point of view. So, for ado, just welcome John Riel over here. He's a little shy. Are you shy?
I'm shy.
I'm shy. Do I make you nervous?
No.
I make people nervous, apparently.
All those people out there make me nervous.
Okay.
I can barely speak, I'm so nervous. Let me know if I'm too loud or not loud enough. And the other thing I'd like to mention is that apparently my job is to speak to you for a few minutes, and your job is to listen. I'd really appreciate it if you get finished before I do. Let me know. Where would I start? Anybody here remember Pierre Elliott Trudeau? One of my favorite people. I am ashamed to admit, when he ran in 1968, I voted for him. Yeah, that was the only time I ever voted Liberal in my life, but I voted for Trudeau. What a dumb move. One of the things that we have as a legacy from Pierre Elliott Trudeau is we have the legacy of multiculturalism. Our strength is multiculturalism. Well, here's my thought on that. When you have 11 different groups, it is physically impossible to have unity. It cannot happen. So from my perspective, what Pierre Elliott Trudeau did all those years ago was create a template and a mechanism for de-unifying Canada. And look around, was he successful? I think he was. You cannot have multiculturalism and nationalism. The two do not go together. Our government spends millions of dollars in supporting various different groups of different ethnic origination and different languages. You name it. It's just not great. So that brings me to one other point. As I attend these talks over the last several months, the issue of economic feasibility for Alberta to be independent is discussed over and over and over again. It is a no-brainer. When you look at $20 to $40 billion a year extra paid into the federal government by Alberta over what we get in return from federal services, it's a no-brainer. So I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about the fact that since 1961, our income tax, our tax on our income as Canadians has increased 2,705%. No, I won't talk about that. I won't talk about the fact that the consumer price index went up 900%. In other words, our taxes went up 3 times higher than the cost of living. Now you know what you can extrapolate that to whatever you want with respect to the cost of being in Canada, but it isn't pretty. I could spend a long time on that. As a matter of fact, I have a book here that's got all sorts of information on costs of being in Canada, and this is what I'm doing with it right now. It's gone. What I want to talk about is this. I want to ask the question, what is a country? What are we trying to do with the Alberta Independence mission? What's our objective? What is a country? Well, here's what I think a country is. People with a shared ethnic origin is a country. People with shared values form a country. People with a common culture form a country. A space with defined borders is a country. And most importantly, if you're going to have a country, you have to be willing to defend those borders. Now, when I talk about defending the borders, I'm not necessarily talking about taking up arms against a foreign adversary, but I'll give you a little story here. How many of you in here are canvassers? There's quite a few of you. Have any of you ever run into somebody that says, oh, I'm not signing that petition. I don't want anybody to know my name. I'm scared. Happens all the time, doesn't it? Well, when you talk about forming a country, the issue is this: the time to stand up and defend your country is when you're afraid. That's when you have to stand up and defend your country. Because if you don't have a country. As I say, it's not necessarily taking up arms and defending yourself against people who are attacking your borders. It's defending the ideas, the principles, the ethics, the values, and the culture that form your country. How many of you think Alberta culture is different from the culture in Ontario? You're absolutely correct. It's totally different. I spent a lot of time in Ontario. We are different than they are, although the people in Northern Ontario are very similar to us. Not the same, but similar. How many of you think that we're different from the people in Quebec? Now, that's a no-brainer. Doesn't that speak to the issue of what your country should be? So let's look at the way Canada is right now. Trudeau brought in multiculturalism. How does that relate to the values that define a country? How does it relate to ethics, values, culture, and define borders, multiculturalism? When you have the German-Canadian Club over here and the Muslim whatever over here and the Greek Association over here, how does that fit with common culture, common values, and common objectives? It doesn't. It's divisive. So what it takes to create a country, these 6 things come from a paper that a retired lieutenant colonel from the Canadian Army put out some time ago. He said, these are the things that we need to have in order to have a country that is, to create and keep a country that is worth leaving to our children. The first one is unity, which flies in the face of multiculturalism. The second is national security. That speaks to the need to be willing to defend your country. The third is good governance. We have that, right? We have good governance. I'm pretty sure we do, don't we? Well, that's what a good little soldier you are. We do not have good governance, which reminds me, Winston Churchill. My wife took a university course, and Winston Churchill said that the reason that the British were able to maintain their empire throughout the world is because Britain was more civilized than the colonies that they created throughout the world, which sounds pretty awful until you realize what he meant. His definition of civilization was a country where the weak were able to instruct the strong, and the strong would take instruction from the weak. We don't have that in Canada, do we? If we assume that the strong are those Laurentian elites who sit down east and tell us when to jump and how high to go, they certainly don't take direction from us. So by Churchill's definition, Canada is not a civilized country at all. Good governance for and by the people. Rights and freedoms is number 4. Personal prosperity and growth. When you think of how Alberta is treated by the federal government, what we pay in taxes and what we pay in equalization and what we get back from the federal government, we do not have the ability to engender personal prosperity and growth for ourselves, our family, and our province. Personal and community well-being. Let's just think back to the fact that the virus in COVID didn't affect anybody in Walmart, but it affected everybody who happened to go into a small business. A really, really smart virus that was. So we don't have personal and community well-being. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this up this way. Fear, which is exampled by the things that you canvassers ran into. Well, I don't want to sign that because maybe they'll freeze my bank account. That wouldn't happen in a free country, so not to be worried about it. Maybe they'll freeze my bank account, or maybe they'll throw me in jail like they did with Chris Barber and Tamara Leach, just because they went to a protest. That couldn't happen in Canada, in a free country. Maybe they'll institute the Emergency Measures Act and run an old Aboriginal lady over with her walker using a horse. That wouldn't happen in a free country, but it happened here. Fear. So here's my admonition to you. Don't let fear stop you. Courage is not being unafraid. It's not the absence of fear. Anybody who's ever been in a difficult situation that presented personal risk to themselves or to those they care about knows full well that fear cannot stop courage. Courage is doing it anyway. And that's what I would ask of all of you. Between now and October the 19th, or whatever the date is, don't let fear stop you, and don't let people tell you they're afraid. Tell them to do it anyway. And let's work to build a country that will have 70% of Canada's agricultural land, that will have 30% of its gross national product, that will export hundreds of millions of dollars, not just to the United States, but to the rest of the world, and create a country with defined borders, common culture, common values, and common purpose that probably won't affect me. I'm almost 80 years old, but it certainly will affect my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. Don't be afraid. Get out there and do it. Thank you very much.
Very interesting point of view. How you guys like it, hey? Before going to the next speaker, I just want to remind you that this tour costs money, and somebody will be passing. Just like in church, we're not giving you any money from Orange Man Bad, or what's the other guy in Russia, Putin? We're not getting money. We're not getting nobody from outside is giving us or funding anything. So we're like 100% on donations. So we have a bucket over there, and somebody's going to pass the bucket as well to cover expenses as well. And also, the event that will be held at the Whistle Stop is a fundraising event. So if you want to, there are many ways to contribute as well too. So if you feel compelled to contribute for this tour, feel free to do so. She's looking at me right now like, what's this guy's doing? Next speaker, Kathy Flett. She, a lot of people know her, but I met her, I think, many times ago, and what she was doing speeches at people's houses. I have it on my show many times, and she is one of the co-partners of the Alberta Women's Independence Network, and I think you're doing your own podcast right now. So without further ado, welcome, Kathy Flett. She's a beast.
Move it down? Oh, yeah. I often remind Max he's lucky we let him into this province with that accent, but... And he's happy to be here. He's one of many who have come here looking for the freedom that we still have, and we are absolutely determined to hang on to with everything that we have. One of two provinces that were colonized in 1905, we need to remember that that day there were no negotiations, no concessions, no deals. We were just told, you're in Confederation now and this is how it's going to be. We didn't even have a legislature downtown Edmonton yet. There were no elections that year. We didn't get to decide who our very first premier of Alberta or Saskatchewan was going to be. We were appointed our first premier, who happened to be a Liberal. As the decades have gone on, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Today, when we look at the political landscape from west to east, you can see that there are twice as many seats in Parliament assigned to the East as there are to the West. There are more than twice as many seats in the Senate assigned to the East as there are to the West. And now we're told that it's representation by population. So too bad. But the math ain't mathin'. What time did the last federal election get called? What time did they call the winner a year ago? 8:09. Somebody has listened to me. What time do our polls close? 8 o'clock. They didn't even open up our ballot boxes to see who we voted for. So even if you voted for the winner, they didn't need your help to make it happen. Albertans have tried to get a voice in Ottawa. Remember the West wants in? Preston Manning and his Reform Party, now in the history books. The West is in. Oh, we celebrated when Harper won, didn't we? We were so happy and so encouraged that things were going to change and something was going to happen. But here we are with nothing to show for it, except an equalization formula that again favors the East over the West. After 121 years of trying to get Ottawa and the eastern provinces to hear us, it's obvious it can't be done. It's impossible. And an ever-growing number of us, of Albertans, are done trying. So today, with a level of boldness like we have never had before, we're exploring our options. We don't have the votes to be heard in Confederation. However, we may have the votes to get ourselves out. And as the conversation has gotten louder, it's been really interesting to hear what the rest of Canada has had to say to us in response. The snarky ones on my social media posts, I don't know what all those names mean, but I'm grateful that they help with the algorithms. That part is fun. And it's also fun watching our haters react to the idea that Albertans are done with Confederation. Not all of us, but an ever-growing number. It began with this, remember? You can't leave. Remember when they said that to us? You can't leave. Yeah, we can. In fact, it was Ottawa's idea to call the question that created the Clarity Act, to give us that opportunity. So yeah, we can. So when that didn't work, they came back at us with this. Do you know what you'll be giving up? Well, I made a list. It's not exhaustive. It tends to get longer every week, but tell me how I do. This is what we're going to be giving up. Living under a government that completely delights in stifling our growth has caused numerous politically induced recessions, landlocked us through policy, regulates everything possible because that's the next best thing to nationalizing it, steals our money through taxation and then launders it to benefit themselves and their friends, believes in open borders so just anybody can walk in, and they do, unbelievable levels of Chinese interference in our politics, and while doing deals with China, extortion being carried out by Indian gangs here in our borders, including Alberta, while doing deals with India. Apparently, we've also got some Mexican drug cartels that are running rampant on our streets, all of which continue to frustrate our largest trading partner to the south. We've got censorship laws, a gun buyback program, 2 courts ruled that invoking the Emergencies Act was indeed unconstitutional, and the response from Ottawa was, we'll appeal it. And now we have a prime minister demanding the Supreme Court take away the province's ability to use the notwithstanding clause. And what that means is they want to centralize as much power as possible out of the provinces and back to Ottawa. And it turns out that if you cannot get a majority government on your own steam, just wait a year and we've got some Conservative MPs that will cross the floor so you get it. That's just some of what we're leaving. So when people say this is all about pipelines, that's not true. It's just not true. It's a symptom of the values that don't align with us. And then when those who are opposed to our ideas realize they have no argument to come back at us with, they come to us and say, oh, but it's going to be so hard. Why bother? Do you know what all you're going to do? What you're going to have to do? It's going to be hard. Do you know who you're talking to? You're talking to the people that figured out how to get gas out of the ground, harness it, so we can turn the lights on. You're talking to the people who figured out how to get oil out of the ground, so that we can do a million things with it around the world. And you think we're worried about becoming our own country because it's going to be too hard? Here's what we'll be gaining, just some of what we'll be gaining when we get to the finish line on this. Because we're no longer under the Canada Health Act, we're finally going to have state-of-the-art healthcare that we deserve. No more traveling to other provinces and other countries to get the care we need. In fact, I would suggest that we will become a healthcare destination. People are going to be coming to us because we're going to be that awesome at what we do and what we provide. Pension plans, this is a big one. By bringing that home to the local level, we're not going to have to worry anymore about where that money's going because it's going to be invested right here. We're going to have so much more control over it. And how about this? Once you pass on, if there's any money left that you contributed, it could go to your estate instead of into the ether. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? And speaking of the ether, how many of you paid into EI, employment insurance? It should be called unemployment insurance again, but anyways, how many of you paid into that and you've never received a dime back or very little? Could that not just roll into your pension? If we wanted to keep that program, and we could roll that into your pension. It's your money. How about this? No more Ottawa dictating what we can and cannot do and can and cannot buy. You want an EV? Go ahead. I want you to have an EV. You want to buy a diesel? I hope you do, because someone's got to go rescue the EV in the wintertime. You want solar? I want you to have solar. There's an application for it. Do not be looking at your neighbors to subsidize it through their tax dollars. You pay for it. No more cartels disguised as supply management. How about this? Schools that actually focus on giving our children a real education rather than trying to use them as little social justice warriors for their own gain. With our own police force, criminal code, and judges, crime is going to reduce dramatically. Our neighborhoods, our kids are going to be safe again. Capital goes where capital is welcome, and once the dust settles, Alberta is going to be open for business. Our city centers are going to be vibrant again, and our small towns, just like this one here in Gibbons, is going to thrive. Free markets, energy security, food security, safe streets, a work-life balance, a solid future, the list goes on, but you get the picture. The vision has been cast. And now what Ottawa is doing is trying to use historical tactics on us, but they're not working. You see, usually what the Laurentian elite do is they deploy these divide and conquer strategies to maintain power. East against West, French against English, men against women, whites against everybody else, especially you white guys. But Albertans of all ages and stages and skin color, languages, backgrounds, we're coming together. We're rolling up our sleeves and we're getting ready to govern ourselves. They can't stop it. And the Laurentian elite are freaking out, to which I say, who cares? As the Prime Minister said himself just a little bit ago, hope isn't a plan, and nostalgia isn't a strategy. He's right. Albertans have been hoping for a very long time that things would change. A lot of people live with the nostalgia of what Canada used to be but no longer is. We know it's a sinking ship. That's what Canada is. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't change it. We don't have the votes. But what we do know is that Albertans have always been trailblazers. It's in our bones. It's who we are. It's what built this province, and it can be what builds a country. So now it's time to blaze a new trail of our own, and it's time to build the sovereign Republic of Alberta. Are you coming back up?
Awesome, hey? What's that good speech, eh? And the fact of the matter is that when you start to know your history, that's when you realize that how things are going. Right? So, the next speech, I'm going to switch the microphones because he doesn't like the podium. Thanks. I'm going to use this microphone because every time I do a speech, every time he changes gears, he always does this. He always likes to move things around. So the next speaker is going to be none other than Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop, right there. And by the way, if you want some pierogies, he's the guy behind it. So without further ado, Chris Scott over here.
There's a reason why I don't like having a podium in front of me. Sometimes I purposely leave my fly down to see if anybody will tell me, and nobody ever does, so thanks a lot for laughing at me. Nobody's laughing. No, the reason I don't want a podium there is because I recently saw a CBC, I don't know, what do you call it, article, report or whatever, claiming that many of the people in the Alberta independence movement are artificial intelligence. They're AI. So I figure at least if you could see me, like you see all of me, you know that I'm not an animatronic behind the podium like Max here. You know I'm not a hologram, I'm a real person. As Max said, my name is Chris Scott. I own a restaurant called the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. And I was kind of, I would say, voluntold to become an advocate for my own future because of events that occurred to me. I ended up staring down the government. I had to fight the government. I kind of won. And it put me in a different mindset. It actually got me questioning like who I was, what my place was here, what my rights are, all sorts of things. And it put me on this journey of like genuinely wanting to improve things for the future. And it's something that I never thought about before. I didn't really care. I thought the future got improved by me working an extra 30 days, on a rig and making an extra 30 grand. Like that was an improvement. But I've learned a lot since then, mostly because I don't make a lot of money anymore, so I'm forced to think about other things. But my point is, I'm just trying to explain that something happened to me that put me in a situation and a position that I didn't want to be in, and I was forced to adapt to that. Now, that's kind of where Alberta is right now. Alberta is in a situation that we were kind of thrust into. We didn't want, we didn't agree, and we're trying to navigate our way through it, and we're trying to figure out what is it that we have to do to be prosperous? What do we have to do to maintain our liberties and our freedom? What is our place here? Do we have a voice? Is it possible to make a change? And actually, there's more similes here than I thought. One of the very first conversations I had with somebody when I was engaged in civil disobedience, and if you don't know, that's how I ended up here. I opened my restaurant against the restrictions, protesting what the government was doing to businesses, and that was the beginning. So I was sitting beside a man named Bruce Holliday. He was the chief of police in the Bashaw Police Department. And he put his arm around me and said, I admire what you're doing, fighting the government. Nobody likes this. They shouldn't be doing this to people, but you can't win. Like, you shouldn't even try. You cannot win against these guys, and just don't go down this road. So I turned to him. I said, well, Bruce, hold my beer and watch me. Now, I'm kind of feeling that same thing as an Albertan. As an Albertan, I say, Alberta's voice isn't strong enough or well-respected enough within Confederation that we can adequately influence the outcome of our future governance. If our federal election's called at 8:09, and our ballot boxes haven't even been opened yet, that is a red flag for me. If our industry can be annihilated by federal policy that we can't influence, that is a red flag for me. And now I hear people saying, oh, you can't do that. You don't even try going up against Ottawa because you can't beat these guys. They're never going to let you go. The other provinces are never going to let you go. It reminds me of my conversation with Sergeant Holliday, who I hope rests in peace, by the way, is no longer with us. And it gets me just as fired up as the conversation with Bruce did. Somebody telling me that I can't do something. But in the grand scheme of Confederation, scheme, no pun intended, with the elbows up crowd, the forever subjugated, forever Canadian crowd, telling Alberta that they can't do this, or they may not do this, or they're not allowed to do this, I have the same response. Really? Hold my beer. I'm going to work harder. Now, instead of doing 200 events, we're going to do 250 events. We're going to go and we're going to talk to everybody in Alberta. We're going to make our case as to why we believe we need this type of change for Albertans, and then we're going to talk to people. And you might be saying, oh, you guys are just standing up there talking at us. No. We shorten our speeches intentionally. It's not because I don't have more to say. I could stand up here and talk for probably 3 hours. And you guys would be all completely engaged, excited the whole time. You'd be paying attention. Nobody would be falling asleep and your lives would change. But I'm not going to do that tonight. Now, we want to keep it short because conversation goes two ways, right? And I'm sure that some people might be here because they disagree. I hope that's the case. Some people might be here because they have questions. There's lots of things floating around on social media. There's lots coming from the legacy media. We have politicians that are getting on soapboxes and telling you why Alberta can't leave or why it's better if we stay. By the way, nobody has given me a good reason yet. And in this sea of information that we have access to like never before, the one thing that I believe is important is these face-to-face, two-way conversation things. And this is kind of your opportunity to be involved. And if it works out, as sometimes it does, that the whole room is on board with the idea of Alberta sovereignty and they want to support that, nobody's mind needs to be changed, then we talk about how we're going to talk to other people. Because that's a big thing, right? Anybody here ever been involved in a MLM, a multi-level market thing? You know that you have to talk to people, right? You have a product or a service that you believe in, that you want to sell. And the only way you can do it is by talking to people. This is no different. I have an opinion. I have an outcome I believe is the best outcome for Alberta, and I need to share that with people. And if most people are in agreement, then we talk about how to do that, because that's a big thing. It's really difficult to go into a room and have a conversation with people that get very emotionally agitated at the idea of having a conversation. Those are things we have to learn. Also, there's times when we go and we speak to a room like this, and there's people that are actually, they disagree, or they haven't made up their mind the way they want to vote yet. And that's okay for now. Once October comes, it's pretty important that everybody that's going to participate in that question, answer the question, should the question happen. I guess there is no guarantee right now. Every person better have done everything they can to get the best information and talk to each other so that they know what they're doing. It's so important. I can't even, every day we get closer to this inevitable question, it's weighing more and more heavily on my shoulders how important it is to get the facts, to know what we're voting for. You know, this isn't like going into a federal election, which it doesn't really matter for Alberta anyway, or a provincial election where if we vote for the wrong candidate, we're going to have 4 years of annoying politician stuff that we don't like, and we'll change that in 4 years. No, this is a different thing. This is like, if you go into this without the knowledge and the wisdom to make the best decision, this is like a lifetime you're going to suffer the consequences or enjoy the benefits. This is the real deal. I don't see anything more important happening in Alberta this year or even in the next 10 years. And it is a little bit disheartening that some of the events that we do, some of these very important talks that we're having, with free supper, by the way, are often, I shouldn't say often, are sometimes poorly attended because there's a hockey game. That's troubling. If people aren't participating in democracy, like the people, if the people don't participate in democracy, those that wish to govern them, subjugate them, and parasite off them, they do participate. And they will, and will suffer the consequence. So thank you for being here. And I hope that you guys have some fantastic questions. I hope that if you have an opposition point or you want to challenge me on my idea that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable, I want to hear it and I'll talk to you. We're going to do that in the form of a Q&A. And we always ask, please try and keep it to a question. It is luring to have a microphone and be able to tell your life story and, explain physics and these types of things. Happy to learn about physics after, but we'll try and get the questions first and then go into some of the other discussion later. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to have a probably 10-minute break, maybe 12, right, Max? Yeah, something like that. A break.
9 minutes and 45 seconds and 35 milliseconds.
Yeah, Max is very specific. He's a sound guy. So we'll have a little break, grab a coffee. We put out some to-go containers so you guys can grab some more supper, take it, have it for lunch tomorrow, share it with one of your Forever Canadian friends, whatever. Tell them afterwards that it was Chris from the Whistle Stop, who's an Alberta independence-minded individual that made it for them, and that will be fantastic. But yeah, please take what you want, grab a coffee. Jessica's over there with some extremely overpriced merch that we sell so that I can actually afford to be away from work. So thank you for helping us out in that way. And we'll be back in 9 minutes, 45 seconds, and 35 milliseconds for a Q&A. Thank you very much.
That's a very good muscle memory. That's okay. So we're going to do the Q&A. I'm going to adjust the cameras a little bit. The way it's going to work is that I will have a wireless microphone here, right? Jim is going to you see the guy with the yellow hat on this side? That's Jim. He's going to pass the microphones, and we're going to keep under about 30 seconds, no statements. And I do have a very fun and important mute button called the mute button, which is very handy in some situations. So for those who are watching live, thanks for staying in. Thanks for the super chats, and I'm going to switch the cameras, and I'll be there soon. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. All right. We're back online, I guess. I just wonder, well, thanks for tuning in because I have like 400 people watching online, so I was doing my connections and cameras and that kind of nonsense, which is kind of cool. I just want to see people where you guys are watching from, because I've seen people from Grand Prairie, I've seen people from Edmonton, obviously. I've seen people from Calgary, Ponoka County. I've seen some people. Alberta Pro, that is actually watching here, which is kind of amazing. Well, thanks very much for tuning in. So I just made my 3-minute warning, so people should be able to come soon. And by the way, from Vancouver, I'm going to tell this. We have people watching from Vancouver today. Online. Kind of cool. We got people from Westlock, Innisfail. Beautiful day out there. Oh, yes. You know, last week I was doing a huge barbecue. I was outside doing a barbecue. And I got some chicken. And that was good. So it's good. Then good time to relax. Good evening from Drayton Valley. Oh, Drayton too. Oh, that's awesome. So we have people from Innisfail, Westlock. Oh, not too far from here. Should have come here. The Yukon. Oh, from the Yukon. That's freaking awesome. Got people from the Yukon as well. Watching from Stettler. I was there, Stettler, the other day. Hey, how's it going? We got people from Okotoks. It is Schwartz. Okotoks. Yeah, I was there in Okotoks a while ago. We got people from Edmonton. No, Edmonton. And I said Edmonton, but I live in Edmonton too. We got people from Vancouver. Double Plus just love it. Oh, that's awesome. So generally, how it works is that apparently there's a hockey game today. I'm like, what? Anyways, we got people from Airdrie. That's awesome. From Airdrie. Oh, have you ever been to the Pulse Pizza? I was at the Pulse Pizza just last week. And I just order a foot-long pizza just so I can eat at home. You know, that was awesome. So encourage your business owners because they need help. Apparently, Paul's great. Oh yeah, one of the best pizzas ever. My dad Neil's there. I finally convinced him to go to an event. Like your dad's here, like in the area, like here. I never heard that because that would be good. I never seen your dad. What's your dad's name? I'm gonna buzz him in. My dad Neil is there. I'm gonna try. Is he here like in Gibbons right now? I'm gonna try to call him. We got people from Renby here. I'm gonna try to call here. Is anybody in the audience whose name is Neil here? No? Huh? Because apparently there was a gentleman by the name of Neil here who was here, and his son convinced him to come to this town hall. I want to see him. Anyhow, that would be good. My dad's company, it's on the French list of companies. GT Hydraulic and Bearing. Oh, really? That's awesome. And by the way, if you lose your job because of stands on independence, I think that list could be a very good one to send resumes to. Say, hey, I lost my job because of independence, and here's my creds, and yada, 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 and should be good. I don't know. Let's see. Hey, Chris, are we ready to go? Okay. All right. Yeah.
I do have a bit of a request, though, folks. Would you guys mind just coming up closer to the front? That way, when we do the Q&A, we don't have to run all over the place. Or even if we're kind of congregated a little closer, if you don't mind.
And it's also going to help the reception of the wireless microphone. I know that it's got a very good range, but it kind of helps things a little bit here. Also saves battery for the microphone. I mean, we don't talk about those details as much, but it's kind of good to say those things, you know. Hey, Chris, we got people from Vancouver watching. Yeah, from Vancouver. Got internet friends from Vancouver watching today. I got people all over the place watching.
Where's my Kathy?
Kathy, where are you? She's a social butterfly.
John's doing what he does best. He's visiting, talking, planning
John,
the Red River Rebellion.
John, tell your cat I said pss, 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 pss. He's way up of the back. Oh my goodness! You know, people are actually watching online and seeing all like this is like the blooper side of things, you know.
Okay, we can get started with the questions. Yes, mine's over there. I forgot it.
Is that it there?
Yeah, that's okay. I don't need any right now.
I would like to know.
Here, right here.
Oh,
I'll hold the mic.
okay. I would like to know, what are we going to do about a military?
Just about every town hall we do, someone asks about the military. It's an excellent question. But before I answer, I want to ask you something about the military. As an Albertan, if you are unhappy with the way the Canadian military is being managed or what they're doing, how do we change it? What do we do about it? Is there anything that you can do as an Albertan to change the way the Canadian military operates? No. That's the biggest point to make here, is this is one of the things, currency is another one, trade is another one, that Albertans, no matter what we do, we cannot change the way these things work. Now, an independent Alberta is an opportunity for the first time ever for us, the people that have to live with the consequences of the decisions, to make the decisions about those things, right? So it would be Alberta that decides what Alberta's military would look like. It would be Albertans who decide through constitutional convention who their military swears an oath to, those types of things. Now, if you want my opinion, because I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you exactly what Albertans would decide, my opinion is that a sovereign nation must have their own military, and that military must have allegiance to the people. Not to an idea, but to the people. That means they would protect the people from enemies external of the nation and enemies inside the nation. It is true that Canada has some excellent service people. I would believe that they would want to serve in a military that promoted honor over ideology, for example. I think that a lot of people who serve right now would be interested in becoming part of an Alberta military, but we wouldn't have it right off the bat. We'd have to build it. While we're building it, we need to do something. It just so happens that our best trading partner, we do upwards of 90% of our trade with, the United States, they have a fantastic military, and they contract it out. It would be reasonable to assume Alberta could easily contract 100% of our defense right off the bat from the United States. 3 other nations on the planet, and I can't remember which ones they are, but 3 nations use them for their primary defense. They contract the United States. They don't have their own army. 28 or 27 other nations have supplementary U.S. forces as well as their forces. So that's my opinion. We would contract the United States military immediately. We have our defense. That also meets our commitments to 2% of GDP funding our defense, which is what the United States has asked for. And then we would build out our military. And very important that we build out our military because, like I said in the beginning, you can't be a sovereign nation if somebody else is defending you.
So, Chris, I just want to kind of add to that. As a veteran, there is no other nation out of NATO that holds its own other than the United States. As a nation currently, we depend on the United States for our defense. So for us moving forward as an independent nation, we'll have to do all the things you say, but we're we would be in a better position, I think, to start than Canada as a whole. Canada as a whole today could not defend its borders. They couldn't 20 years ago when I first joined, and they certainly can't today. So everything you're saying, the GDP, no other nation but the United States puts the recommended number of their GDP into their defense budget according to the original NATO agreements. So today, moving forward as Albertans, I think you're right. It's very important that we decide that we want maybe more reservists than a full-time military. We ease into it. We create a better defense plan than what we currently have as a nation. And it doesn't mean a huge budget going to it. You can have a very professional military, very small military. You just have to look at history to see that small professional militaries were very useful. And I think Alberta could thrive with a small professional military. Maybe the number that we already have stationed here in Alberta. A nice tidbit is the current special forces are made up largely of Western Canadians. All the world record sniper kills are Western Canadian snipers. So you just start looking at the math. You look at those cat badges amongst the special forces, and you're like, oh, those guys are all from here anyway. Maybe they'll come back. So,
and we don't need a Navy.
I have a bit of a response to that. We don't have a military for Alberta alone right now, but my contention is this: we don't have one to defend Canada either. We already don't have really a military. We have a very, very highly skilled professional minor force that does an excellent job of the tasks that they're assigned, but we really don't have a military. So we're starting from nothing, and our objective would be to have a military in Alberta that actually was a military, and we would do it in conjunction by forming alliances with other countries, most particularly the United States and probably Canada as well. So I'll give you an example of the way things are going in Canada right now. There's some basic officer training taking place down east. Basic officer training is like a 13, 14-week program where people who are titularly qualified to be officers in the Canadian military are brought in to do some basic Army officer training. Their graduation rate right now is less than 50%. I think it's 47% are successfully graduating from that program in the last little while. And the reason that is because they're bringing in, for commissioned officers, they're bringing in permanent residents, some of whom have been in Canada for as little as 3 months. They don't understand English, they don't understand French, they're of different ethnic groups within that particular platoon of officer candidates. They fight with each other, they have no respect for females in the military, they don't recognize the authority of a female who holds a superior rank. They're having a heck of a time. What I will say is, as becoming an independent country, we'll have the opportunity to create a military that we need and not deal with the cluster that we have right now in Canada.
Is Colonel Redmond on board with setting up a military here?
Is he on board?
Yeah.
I haven't asked him.
We just had Colonel Redmond on a podcast series that we're doing, and actually he'll be on a couple more times with us in relation to the document that Dave was talking about with his 6 pillars. And he said to us, I'll come and I'll take part in this this podcast series that you guys are doing, but you understand I'm a federalist, right? Like, you know, I'm not for independence. And I was like, yeah, we totally know that. We completely understand that. But we just love what you put in this document, and we'd like to use it as a blueprint. So he says, okay, but you know. Yes, we know. And so then as far as anything to do with the military, that is why he wrote that, what is it, 24 pages or something? The white paper on building a strong country, a resilient country, and part of that is a military, because he says we don't have it. And in fact, he quit the military because he couldn't stand what he was seeing anymore. He didn't necessarily retire from it, he quit from it. So that's where he stands. He's not for us building our own, he's for us staying in Canada, but he does understand and appreciate the need for a strong military to do it.
Something that Lieutenant Colonel Redmond said was that his white paper is a 25-year plan. Yeah. Okay, this is not. when you talk about what are we going to do for a military in Alberta, it's not going to happen next week. We're going to require, like Chris says, we're going to require the help of allies in order to provide the initial military responsibilities for our country while we build our military. It's not going to happen in 2 or 3 days.
Where are we on money and currency for our Republic of Alberta?
Where would you like to be? Again, it's the same premise. What do we do now? I originally came up here with a $20 bill, a $10 bill, and a $5 bill, and I was planning on holding up the $20 bill and explaining that, 20 years ago, this was $20, and then I wanted to let you know that today, that's $10. So that $10, 20 years ago, is now $5. Our money has devalued by just about 50% in 15 years. And there's not a darn thing Alberta's been able to do about it. As a matter of fact, we've been largely against the monetary policy of the Liberal government. Western Canada, all of Western Canada has been opposed to it. We haven't been able to do anything. So an independent Alberta is an opportunity for us to build our currency to sustain. Build a currency that's backed with something tangible, something that we can go and audit every couple years or every year as citizens. Walk into the, not Fort Knox, that's a private corporation, but the Alberta Reserve and see that we have the physical asset to back our dollar. But again, that takes time. And again, the logical, at least in my opinion, stopgap is the US dollar. The US dollar is widely accepted. You can trade internationally. It's fairly stable. Our largest trading partner uses it. They don't mind when other countries use their currency. There's over 24 countries that use the US dollar, or that accept the US dollar, and I think there's 2 that use it as their primary reserve currency. So it would be just, easy to use the US dollar immediately. Some people say, why wouldn't we use the Canadian dollar? And I say, why would we use the Canadian dollar after Alberta pulls out 15% of new value creation GDP out of the economy? That would be a bad idea. And again, we wouldn't be able to control the monetary policy. It is true that we wouldn't be able to effectively influence the monetary policy of the United States either. However, their dollar is more stable and secure, and it's historically been less subject to the types of things we're seeing in Canada. Although 2008, that was pretty cool when our dollar was worth more than theirs, but that's not common, and it's kind of a black swan thing. So yeah, US dollar, we build an Alberta Reserve that's built to sustain, and we put that in our Constitution. So our governments can't do the finagling that they've done now, printing double the money, deflating it like they have. We actually set the stage so that our children can enjoy a stable currency as well, not just us.
The short answer to why we don't use the Canadian dollar, if it ever comes up again, is that what an economist will tell you is the Canadian dollar has a very small float. In other words, it's not very big. It doesn't have a large impact in the financial community in the world. So it's not what we would want to use. The American dollar still is the world's reserve currency, and it makes absolutely no sense not to use it in the interim.
We could always use, what's China's currency? We could use that. I think we're already trading with them. We want to usher in the new world order with China. With the yuan, yeah. I mean, if that's what Alberta wants, again, opportunity.
We can't let him have the mic sometimes. As we're talking these things out and thinking about these things, it's kind of fun because we get to dream a little bit, right? What could our future hold? What is it going to look like? What things do we need to watch for? What gaps do we need to fill? And I'm in agreement just to go to the U.S. currency, certainly as a stopgap to get from here to there. But I also think that perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea to stick with that one because they are our largest trading partner. It makes it much easier that way. However, we also know that that currency is going to become a digital currency as well, right? We know that. So for that reason, I believe that yes, we could do all of our external trade with the American dollar, but internally we need to have a tangible in my wallet Alberta dollar. Not I like paying with cash. I really, really, really do. And I laugh at all these people who get upset that, oh, we're going to go to digital currency as they're paying with their phone, right? Like, think this through. But it's true. It's exactly what happens. So we need to still have that Alberta dollar so that we can trade amongst ourselves when the rest of the world goes to pot. Like to protect and insulate ourselves. So that's what I would like to see, is actually be like dual almost. One for dealing with everybody on the outside and one for us inside to make sure that we're self-sufficient.
Is there anyone here that's concerned about the impending digital currency? Digital ID, that's a concern. I would say that that's on most people's radars now. And there's some people that are just looking forward to the opportunity for more tyrannical control from governments, and whatever, that's their opinion. I'll try and change it. We have zero protections right now, nothing. The world has changed considerably since 1982, more so since 1867. We have no constitutional enshrined protections against these things. There is nothing in our Constitution that says you will always be allowed to use physical cash. That's not there. If a government right now says you can only use this digital currency that's going to be tied to your digital ID, that's going to be tied to your social credit score, and if you don't take a medical intervention you don't want, we're going to lock your currency, there's not a darn thing you can do about it. You have no property rights, you have no currency rights, and if you are concerned about those things, you are a sovereignty-minded Albertan. Because we don't worry about these things just to worry. We worry about them because we want to solve the problem. If you want to solve the problem, an independent Alberta with the Constitution that we write is the only way to do that right now.
Now that we are retired, we're concerned about pension plan, and would we be able to pull that out of the federal? Everything that we put into it? Or is that we leave and it's lost?
So I have two options, I guess. I'll call them options to that. So the first thing is now, any Canadian who is drawing on their CPP, if they move to another country, they still get their CPP, right? Because there's tax treaties between Canada and those countries. So they still get to do that. Theoretically, logically, that same should still happen for Alberta. When we become our own country, that should still be the case. We should still be able to say, yeah, well, you paid into that. That's your money. You should be able to get it. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of faith in Carney, let alone everybody else that's around him. So I hesitate to promise that to anybody, but here's what I will say. Albertans contribute $9 billion, with a B, $9 billion a year into that CPP fund. Albertans take out $6 billion, with a B, dollars per year of that CPP fund. That leaves a $3 billion buffer. So even if Ottawa decided to be jerks, imagine that, if they did, we have more than enough contributions right here in-house to ensure that not one of our seniors will ever go without. Ever go without. So there's nothing to worry about there. Either way, they can't get us on that one.
Have we got any plan for getting rid of the cell towers and the surveillance and the photos that are taking every time you stop or move or breathe? Has that been addressed, or is that just me?
I have an idea. I think we should do a massive social media campaign explaining how much copper is in those things. And let nature take its course. There's silver in those things too, just FYI, internet land. So that's a good question. The question is basically about surveillance, right? We are becoming a surveillance state. Your phone is listening to you right now, by the way. during COVID, it was exposed that the Canadian military, in conjunction with the Canadian Behavioral Sciences Department, which is the Ministry of Propaganda, they actually monitored you via your cell phone and then said, oh no, we were just seeing if we could, so it was okay that we were surveilling you. Like, these things are happening. And there's, again, nothing you can do about it. There's nothing in a constitution or any Bill of Rights or anything that prevents that type of surveillance on you. So if you're concerned about it, we need to be independent, or we need to, at the very least, change our constitution, which is impossible in the case of Confederation. Alternative is to write one for ourselves. So, you know, this is something that we could do and we should do, because the world has changed since 1867. We know that certain things affect our bodies in different ways, and we need to be conscious of that, and we need to make sure that at the very least we have informed consent. And that can only be done through changing from a system that government writes and imposes on us to tell us how to behave, to something that we do that tells government how they may behave.
Okay, I'd like to add to that. I'm a targeted individual. I've been involved in bringing in the truth about doing a lot of research on a lot of different things, especially with the Israeli Mossad and the U.S.-Israeli government and how they work together with trying to take over the Middle East, I guess, not to help the Jews any, but basically for the oil rights off Gaza and off Gaza. But the other thing, back to the surveillance, these targeted individuals. Okay, so I was attacked with voice to skull over 10 years ago, voice to skull. And I also had tiny drones hovering above my face at 3 o'clock in the morning in my home by myself.
I have to interrupt you for a second.
The point.
This is a Q&A, and I did say that statements and stuff is for after, okay?
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. We will talk about it after, because I want to hear what you have to say.
So we heard from Mr. Riel, what is a country? We heard from Ms. Flett, what we're giving up. We heard from you, Mr. Scott. Hold my beer. Here's the referendum. We're going to continue working. That's good. Thanks. What type of government do we see at the end of this? Because I think the premise of where we're at is people weren't civically engaged. They weren't participating in democracy. What do you foresee? The three of you, I'd like to hear a different response of what type of government it will be bicameral, Parliament, MP, Senate, proportional. Because if we have three people up here talking three different things, that constitutional meeting is going to be an annual event where we're trying to sort out our stuff. Thank you.
Again, it's all individual opinions. I don't get to decide what kind of government we are going to have. What I advocate for is each and every Albertan who's going to be affected by this, you start learning. You learn about the greatest experiment in freedom the world has ever seen, which is the United States of America. And you learn what made it work. Where is it short? Where does it fall short? How can we look at the rest of the world and what's worked and what hasn't worked and implement that in a new nation of Alberta so we have the greatest chance of success? Because I'll tell you this right now, no government is perfect. There is no perfect type of government. Actually, there is. There's one type of government that was perfect for everybody, and we completely abandoned it. That form of government was a dictatorship, believe it or not. It was a benevolent, omniscient, omnipotent ruler who loved everybody equally and wanted the best for everybody. That was the God of the Bible. And at one point, human beings said, no, we want a king. We want a man that we can have as a king here. And it's been crap ever since. So there is no such thing as perfect government. We only have the best we can do. And the best that we do comes from all of us who care, who are actually, we're fighting for something. We're fighting for an opportunity to self-govern. We're fighting for real independence. The United States, one of the reasons why their civic participation is, I think, it's between 60 and 70% or something like that. They literally party and have rallies during election periods, right? It is unbelievable to watch. Canada, we'd rather watch a hockey game. Why is that? because we didn't fight for it. We didn't earn it. We were busy battling the prairie winters and had this imposed on us, and this is how you're going to be governed. So who gives a crap? We didn't have to fight for that. We didn't have to work for it. When we fight and we work for this particular opportunity, imagine what civics will look like after this. Is anybody in this room, once that referendum is successful, are you going to be back to your normal lives? Are you going to be excited that for the first time in Canadian history, we can really self-govern? Are you going to be involved? Are we going to fill stadiums and party like it's, like, I shouldn't say party. Are we going to celebrate our opportunity to be free and self-govern? We don't do that right now. So the type of government that I want, I like what the United States does, even though it's not perfect. I like a constitutional republic that's based on a foundation of truth that sets the stage and does its best to prevent tyranny in the future, where it gives it defers to the citizen instead of government. That's what I want. I want the table to be flipped so that it's the government that is responsible to us instead of us always being responsible to the government. But in the end, to be perfectly frank, my name's not Frank, to be perfectly honest, there is no guarantee that it will be better. Because if we do this and we get this and everybody goes back to watching hockey, it will go to crap. And the people that don't rest, that want to tyrannize you, will continue doing the things they're doing, and it won't be better. If we get involved, it will be better. And that's, that's something that we have to bring with us into our conversations, is that the opportunity doesn't guarantee success. It gives us the opportunity to have success. And that's what freedom is, folks. Freedom isn't being free to succeed and be better and be rich. It means that you have the freedom to fail. And we will if we're not involved.
How does one? I agree, Chris. No government is the best government.
Wow.
No government is great. Unfortunately, we have to have some sort of government just to administer public services. But when you ask what kind of government do I see a government that is balanced. I see a government that has checks and balances. In Canada, we don't have government that has checks and balances. We have a government by one person in Ottawa, the Prime Minister. You might say that his office has some influence, but not really. They're just one guy. It's the same thing in Alberta and the other provinces. In reality, although we have a premier who theoretically is responsible to the legislature, that premier holds almost absolute power until the party that she works for tosses her out or him out. When we look at the way we govern ourselves in Canada now, we have to change. And I think that Chris is absolutely correct. Right now, the best alternative that we have is the Constitution of the United States, because what it does do is it defines the responsibilities and the divisions between the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branches of government. They have some holes in their government. We have an opportunity in Alberta to look at that as a template, fix the holes, and improve on the American Constitution and make it even better. So I think that the key to what we need to do is that balance. And the other key Chris also referred to is if we go back to watching hockey, then we deserve everything we get. We need to be not just involved now while we move towards becoming an independent country, but that once we become independent, this idea that around the kitchen table at supper time you're not allowed to talk about religion and politics has to go the way of the dinosaurs. We need to talk among ourselves, we need to talk to our children, we need to talk to our neighbors about politics and about religion so that we can continue to force from the bottom up and fulfill Churchill's idea of civilization, which is the strong take direction from the weak. It has to be bottom-up driven, and it has to be by the people, and it has to have those capacities to balance the three responsibilities of government, which is judicial, executive, and legislative.
So you're saying let's talk, Alberta?
Yeah.
Nice.
My answer will be much shorter than that. I do agree with the Republic. The Westminster system doesn't work, obviously. We are living proof of that, as are lots of other countries who have wanted to do away with it. So definitely it's got to be a republic. I take it a little bit further, and this is just according to me. This is what I would like to see, and if someone has something to correct me on, I'm happy to have that discussion, is rather than representation by population, I would like to see our country of Alberta broken up into regions. So northwest, northeast, central, south, and then the 2 cities. And each of those regions is then autonomous within themselves to manage their own business, their own way, the way that they want to. So if the cities want to lose their mind and go ridiculous, well then I guess they can, but that's not going to affect anybody in the rural. And if the rural decides to make some decisions that maybe don't reflect well in the cities, it won't matter because everybody is being autonomous. What goes on in the north doesn't always take place in the south, and so this way people have the freedom to flourish the way that's best for them in whichever part of our country they live in. And then from those regions, they would have a representative that goes to the federal level. So we would have local representation in the regions, and then we would have a federal level, and that brings 2 things to bear. The first is a very small government, which is the most controlled government, having it small, and then the second is that it would be so localized that it would really help to prevent things from going sideways, because everybody is going to know where their political leader lives. They're going to be neighbors, and there's going to be much more accountability that way. So that's how I envision it.
Can I just mention that tomorrow is the founding meeting of the CenturionProject.ca with Tim Hoven, David Parker, and Jason Levine. So the CenturionProject.ca, Wednesday night, south of Edmonton.
We've got questions online?
Yeah, I think should be taking some questions online. That'd be good. I have a few online. So question number 1 is, at what point, give me a second. So the question is, if Alberta separates from Canada, what is the time frame for Albertans to not pay any more federal taxes? Good question, eh?
So when do we stop paying federal taxes? The minute we declare independence. The minute we declare independence. So here's how I think it's going to look, is we'll get to referendum day, the referendum will pass, that's then going to trigger negotiations. The negotiating team that is being put together right now has a very ambitious goal of like less than 6 months that this will all be done from beginning to end. We'll see how that goes. I think that goal is probably ambitious because we're anticipating that the rest of Canada is not going to really come to the table in good faith like they're supposed to, so it might turn out that we need to do a unilateral declaration of independence, and that's fine. We're ready to do that. We will do that. I don't think it's going to be hard to find 2 countries to agree with us, and then that's it, because then we're our own country.
Another question from the audience is, and it's also related to money and from the federal government as well, is that a possibility that Albertans will be able to get some payment for all the CPP money they have after Alberta separates? Because to my understanding that there's basically no money left on the CPP fund, isn't it?
Well, there is money there. The CPP, the fund, I think, is $800 billion or something like that. It's around $800 billion. So the money is there somewhere. The math is very plain. Alberta's share, what we've paid in, minus what we've received, is about $400 billion. And that's supposed to be ours. And it was actually Ontario, believe it or not, that had that added to the CPP legislation because they were worried they were going to shoulder the burden of the rest of Canada. So they wanted to make sure if that was the case, that they could withdraw and do it themselves. Why? Because Ontario realized that doing it yourself, you can manage it better and it works out better for you. So it's $400 billion. Now here's an interesting question I get from the Forever Canadians all the time. Well, if Alberta is only 15% of Canada's population, why are they entitled to 40 or 50% of the CPP fund? The question that I ask is, if $400 billion of that is ours, and there's only $400 billion left for the other provinces and territories, where's the money? That's the real question. So yes, we do have money owed to us. We've also contributed $600 billion to Confederation, for which we've never received a penny. We overpay EI, we overpay CPP. We are a net contributor big time. Yes, there's federal stuff that we would have to negotiate. Yes, there will be negotiations. But I can tell you right now, if we send people like my friend Jeff Rath to be part of that negotiating team, and my friend Keith Wilson, and my friend Dr. Dennis Modry, and some of my other friends, I never mention names because I always forget one and they get mad at me. If we send people like that, and even Danielle Smith maybe, who knows? If we send some of these people to negotiate these things, the federal government is going to be left in a puddle of their own pee, because the math is on our side, the facts are on our side, and the only thing they have to stand on is things like, well, why do you think you deserve that much? And to which, of course, we would reply, well, because that's what we're due. Where's the rest of it? What have you done with it? Short answer, yes, they owe us a lot of money.
Just another observation. When the idea of the Alberta pension plan first was making some headway here in Alberta, one of the first things the federal government did was call a conference of finance ministers from all the provinces into Ottawa. That was because they realized that if Alberta withdrew its share from the CPP fund and established an Alberta pension plan, the rest of the country would be in doo-doo right up to their eyebrows.
I have some questions for the audience as well. It's like popping everywhere right now. It's kind of, I don't know, I got people saying, hey, I'm watching the hockey, hey, go mute, but I have Freedom Canada or the other side for you full blast, which is kind of cool. That I'm kind of honored. Another question that I have from the audience is relating to federal workers who are working in Alberta, but let's say that your employer is DCRA or Service Canada. What do you think is going to happen for those federal workers who are working here in Alberta after a referendum?
I answer these questions honestly, not in a way that I want to make sure everyone's happy with my answer. There's a lot of people that are going to be very upset with my answer coming up here shortly. 1 in 4 Canadians works for government, bureaucracy, or something supported by government. That means 25% of people in Canada earn or are paid by the other 75%. That is a very, very large number. Is there anybody in this room that believes that 1 in 4 people need to be public servants? No. Federal workers in Alberta, some of them will be, Alberta will have to manage these things. So there are people that are doing jobs right now, for instance, passports, okay? Alberta will need passports. We have 2 passport printing offices here, one in Edmonton, one in Calgary. We're gonna need those. So why would we not use those people and train them to be more efficient, of course? Now, here's where people get upset with me. And actually, on the passport thing, I should be a little bit gracious to them, because one time I needed my passport in the afternoon, realizing that something was wrong with it in the morning, and I was only 20 minutes late. I almost made my flight. I went into the passport office first thing in the morning, and I had my passport by like 3:40. It was amazing. Anyway, I think we should fire at least half of our bureaucrats. I think we should fire at least half of our government workers. And I'm sorry if you're one of those people, but your feelings about your entitlement to my money, they kind of end with an independent Alberta. Now, you might be inclined as one of those workers to not support the idea of Alberta independence, to which I would say, why are you so selfish and not care about your neighbors? Why do you believe that you have a right to exist off the work that other people do? So this is an opportunity for every level-headed, logically thinking Albertan who is in the least bit fiscally responsible to reset this idea that we exist to support bureaucracy. No. Bureaucracy exists to support us and make sure that the holes in the road are filled, which, if you live in Fort McMurray, doesn't happen.
True enough. Couple of things. One is that my wife mentioned this morning she heard a news article about which company was it? It's a communications company, either Shaw or
Rogers.
Rogers. They're laying off 12,000 people. That's half their workforce. That's what happens when Shaw and Rogers merged. You had people doing duplicate jobs. You had more people doing jobs than you needed. The same thing, even before we look at getting rid of the, like 25% or 50% of our government workers, there's going to be duplication of effort between who has been working federally and who's been working provincially, and it will result in some job losses. But the converse of that, and there's another thing I want to mention too in just a minute, the converse of that is that we are going to see an influx in Alberta of hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. These people are not going to be without work. There's going to be a lot of work out there. And they're going to be able to move into the private sector and work for a living like most of the rest of us. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that way back when, many of you people are as old as I am. I'm 78 years old. When I was a kid, people went to work for the government because of two things: benefits and a pension. And the government responded to that requirement or that desire for a pension and a steady job by paying less money to their workers than they did in the private sector. That isn't the case anymore. When you look at what government workers are earning, they earn more than their counterpart in the private sector. That's wrong. And that's also something we'll have to address when we look at Alberta as a country. This idea that we want to offer a cushy job, a lifetime guarantee of employment, and a cushy pension at the end of it for more money than they can make working for Joe's construction company has got to stop. And that will happen. There's no question about it.
I got another question from the online audience.
Max, let me just add to that
Oh, sorry.
for just a quick second. The reason that happened, that government workers were suddenly now making more than their private counterparts, is because of a union. That's what happened. And so in the new country of Alberta, I would suggest that in our Constitution is embedded something very strongly worded that states no government civil servant worker will ever be able to unionize. It is not fair to put that kind of stress and strain on your next door neighbor who has to be the one to pay your wage. So no matter the position, if you are working in some sort of a government position, it cannot be unionized ever. And I think that should just be a standard.
Go along with that one.
You go along with that one? Okay. All right.
I'm cool with that. Unacceptable French is actually watches your stream, which is kind of funny. And he was kind of outlining the idea of making or building this Alberta, like right now Canada is building this Alberta Wealth Fund, right? Right? What do you think about making or building a Alberta Wealth Fund instead of a Canadian Wealth Fund, which is essentially just a money grab against Albertans?
Well, we should have been doing that decades ago. And the Canadian Sovereign Wealth Fund, I think, might possibly be supported by the $30 billion that we hemorrhage from Alberta to Canada every single year, right? We should have been doing this years ago. Has anyone seen any of the videos of events we've done with Benoit Trudeau? He's a good Trudeau. Has anyone seen him? Benoit Trudeau wrote a book called Enough. Just remember these two words, Enough Trudeau. Can you remember that? Buy his book on Amazon and read what Quebec does. Quebec has a sovereign wealth fund that blows everything else out of the water. Their pension fund is like 3/4 of what the Canada pension fund is. Their bank, their main bank, Desjardins, 90% of Quebecers bank with them. There's so much money and so much reserve in that bank. If Quebec wanted to have a Quebec dollar tomorrow, they could do it. Just like that. That's what sovereignty is, doing those things, managing those things. So when Carney comes out and starts talking about a sovereign wealth fund, I'm thinking, okay, well, here's another thing that Alberta is going to support that's going to cause Eastern voters to support Liberal governments that kick the crap out of Alberta. Yay, awesome.
Stated clearly, the Canadian Sovereign Wealth Fund is basically pirated money from the Alberta Heritage Trust Fund.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. Another one?
It's our money.
I might take another one, but I think that was answered in a previous town hall, but I'll do anyways. What happens when Daniel Smith does not put the independence referendum question on a ballot?
Well, that's a question and a statement. It's an assumption that that she's going to do that, and then question based on the assumption. I don't believe that she is not going to put it on the ballot. She said she would. I don't have any other reason to believe she wouldn't. But if she didn't, I'm just going to look in my crystal ball here. What's going to happen? If Danielle Smith did not put the independence question to a ballot, after the firestorm of independence that we've seen in this province, it would fracture the party. It would completely destroy most of her support base. It would probably bring down government and ensure an NDP victory. It wouldn't be good, and she knows these things. Why? I can't imagine it happening. Like I'm a burger flipper, roughneck with a little bit of college. I don't have a degree in political science. She does. She knows the outcome of doing something like that, and I can't see pulling the self-destruct pin like that. So yeah.
I don't, it's not in her best interest to do it either. That would literally be political suicide for her to do something like that. But if she did, let's just game it out. If she did do that, there's also a UCP AGM that will be scheduled right after that referendum vote date. It should be gone. The base, the membership is already growing, where there are more and more Albertans saying, yeah, we recognize we need to get more involved, so they're buying UCP memberships, they're getting ready to go to that AGM, they're getting ready to get more active in their CAs, they're getting ready to vet candidates for the 2027 election. If she does not put it on that ballot, that UCP party will probably be quite unrecognizable within 12 months because the people will come in and change it.
I see Danielle Smith as someone who's very seriously trying to walk down the middle of the road. She's walking between federalists and independents. And she's trying very hard not to cater to either side because she wants to maintain the UCP government. So if there's a clear indication through a referendum that we want independence, I can't see her not supporting it, even if she doesn't agree with it, because she has positioned herself and talked about herself as someone who is willing to obey the wishes of the people. She's positioned herself that way. If she didn't, if there was a successful referendum and she ignored it, the fallout in this province would be horrendous. It would be awful because, like you guys say, the party would implode. But not only the party, the entire population of the province would be at each other's throats. It just would be an absolute mess, and I can't see her. She's smart enough to know that that's what would happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let's remember that this fight, if you want to call it that, for independence is ours, right? It's not the politicians, it's the people. And so the folks that are constantly at her saying, well, pick a side, how come like she's always being accused of catering to those of us that want independence. That's not even true. That is not even true. She has never, ever done that at all. What she has done is made it completely possible for Albertans to participate in the democratic process of getting a referendum in front of the people. That's what she did. That's it. She has never taken a side, not on either side, really, other than to say she wants a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, whatever that means. But we need to leave her out of this fight. Don't ask her to take a side. This is not her role to do. This is ours. This is the people. It's by the people for the people. The same with the MLAs, and I see these challenges. Well, does my MLA support independence, and blah, 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 and on and on and on they go, and they want them to publicly declare. No, this is not the time. This is by the people for the people. I contend and have contended for months now that the reason this movement got this far is twofold. One, those of us that won't shut up about it refused to get under one banner, so they couldn't pull us down. We created too much of a game of whack-a-mole for the people who don't want to see this happen. That's exactly what we did. We all get along, we all talk to each other all the time, we all help one another, but we didn't come under one banner. We just pulled the rope in the same direction collectively together for the last lots of months. The second reason that we made it this far is because we left the politicians out of it. We left them out. And we need to continue to do that until such a time as we bring them back in. And that time is when we go to negotiate. That's when the politics starts to come back in. However, those politicians, those Alberta politicians, we need to make sure that they understand they are negotiating on our behalf, not theirs. This is our voice, not theirs. And so it's a bit different than what we're used to. We're used to politicians telling us, well, this is how it's going to be, and we're going to pass this omnibus bill, and your taxes are going to go up 10%, and you're going to be happy to pay it. That's what we're used to. And we're turning that on its head, telling these politicians, no, you know what, Albertans are united like we have never been before. Under the banner of independence, you will be listening to us and taking this forward. So I just say that to encourage you, leave the Premier out of it, leave her alone. She's doing a pretty good job. Leave your MLA out of it. It's not time for them to say anything yet. That day will come, and let's just get that referendum passed. That needs to be the focus.
Hi, I'm wondering, are we starting to collect business heads, great people to actually run this province? It'd be nice to get away from these, lifetime politicians. Clean up this province. Are we starting to build some kind of like a new party or new faces, new blood into the whole system? Is that being looked into right now? I know a lot of people are saying maybe what's his name, Keith Wilson should be part of the government. It could be Chris Scott. I mean, are we starting to build, Kathy Flett?
Heaven help us all.
No, seriously. I'd like to see Alberta pull away from these, career politicians.
I agree. So lots of that will be answered when we have our constitutional convention. So there's going to come a time when Albertans are going to have to get together and do some reading, constitutional convention, decide what kind of government we want, right? Not yet. We got to get the referendum passed. Yeah, no, we need to get that referendum passed. Now, I can tell you that there is a draft constitution to give us something to work from. That has already been created. And so when we get the referendum passed, it'll be, the way I envision it, and I stand to be corrected, but the way I envision it is there'll be two tracks. So there'll be the negotiating team that's hanging out with all the premiers and Ottawa and First Nations, negotiating our way out until we can't, and it might come, right? I'm a businesswoman. Sometimes you just got to walk away and say, okay, we can't make a deal, see ya. But that will be the one track. And then the second track that will take place is us going around and kind of probably doing something similar to this, saying, okay, well, here's the draft constitution. What do you like? What do you not like? Let's get your thoughts together. We'll compile them all. Majority wins. That's what it'll look like. In there, to keep from exactly what you're saying, where we have these career politicians, I contend we need to have term limits. I think, and I don't care what the position is, there needs to be term limits. I also contend that no politician should be getting any kind of a pension out of their time that they're spending as a politician. You're not there, as a career. You're there as a servant. Now, I'm not going to say they should get, like minimum wage. That's not right. But there's a lot of perks that I don't think they should have, and we can put those in our constitution, which will prevent exactly what you're saying. Will we have a party system? I don't know. These are the conversations we have to have. What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks of a party system? What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks of not having a party system? The beauty of it is, as Chris said earlier, we've got thousands of years of government structure and an internet with which to go and ask these questions. Heck, ask Grok. See what Grok has to say. Who knows? Maybe he's got an answer. But these are the fun conversations we get to have. But the timing of which we have them is important as well. So right now, a lot of people are saying the why do we have to leave Confederation is being answered. That part seems to be resonating now more and more. Now it's the how do we do it and can we do it? So that's the next round of questions that we seem to, that we're being asked. That's the theme across the province. And then, okay, everybody's got that convinced, so we pass the referendum. Now we get into the nuts and bolts of it. And then that's where we're also going to be able to respond to how the rest of Canada is going to respond to that referendum, which will also bring some answers to the questions, and how the world is going to be responding to it, for that matter. But yeah, there's got to be a sequential order.
I don't know, but they probably still don't do it, but I remember back in the day, Montana used to allow their state legislators to sit for like 2 or 3 days a year. I think that's a pretty good idea. They restricted what they could do by limiting the amount of time they could spend in the legislature. We already have gazillions of laws. We don't need any more. One of the things that I've always heard is that we've got to get better people into government to represent us. And the way we do that is we've got to pay them more money. Well, I got to tell you, money doesn't mean a darn thing to people who have the capability to do a good job in the legislature. It means nothing, because those people are already doing fine. Thank you very much. What we need to do when we look at how we're going to structure our new government is we want to make sure that every individual who is elected to sit in that government has some clout. Right now, they don't. If you remember Trudeau Sr., his reference to the backbenchers when he was asked about his backbenchers, he says, they're nobodies. They don't count. The way we get people who are competent, capable, and dedicated into our government services is not to pay them more money, but to give them responsibility, accountability, and to make them effective in what they do. In other words, get rid of party whips. Get rid of mandatory whipping to votes, make every vote in the legislature a free vote, allow collegiality between the one that sits on the far left and the one that sits on the far right and the one in the middle, so that what they come up with is beneficial for all of us. That's the kind of thing we're going to have to look at when we're looking at how we're going to constitute our new government.
Yeah, well said, sir. Oh, no.
Yeah, oh no. So circling back to Chris's statement there about 25% of Albertans, Canadians are, probably 1-2 legs away from the government. Has there been conversations of a transition plan? Because it's not only the government workers, which we can all agree 25% of the government workers are not just lazy bastards that deserve the boot. But there's also the tech sector. There's also so many jobs that can literally be plucked from our province and moved elsewhere. They may choose to stay unemployed, or they may choose to follow their employer to wherever they set up shop. So it behooves us not to alienate it well over 25% if you include tech sector and transportable jobs. Have there been conversations about a stopgap, much like I've heard there's conversations about a stopgap within the currency transfer too? Because clearly the Canadian dollar is going to fall like a rocket, and if anybody isn't on the bobble, they stand to be tremendously impacted with this. So there's two kind of questions there. Sorry to kind of lay it out like that, but.
Well, we already have a stopgap. There's severance laws, there's employment insurance, which is really nothing, right? But here's a better question. Are we morally obligated to continue supporting people doing jobs that are not necessary and not to our benefit? Do we have that? Right? The question is there a plan, a stopgap for people who would be displaced if we get rid of a bunch of bureaucrats, right? In my opinion, these are jobs that should not exist in the first place. And anyone, again, people are going to not like me for saying this, but anybody who exists in a job that's funded by a taxpayer and they know that their job is irrelevant and they're still getting paid should count it a blessing that they've made it this far getting paid that. Well, I do not believe we have any obligation to continue paying for bloat after it's identified. An independent Alberta. Yeah, I do expect some of them to vote yes. I do. You know who I would expect to vote yes? The ones that do a good job and know they're necessary. 100%. And I'm not going to lie and say, oh yeah, I would just keep them employed. No, I wouldn't. And if they don't want to vote yes because of that, I'm just one guy anyway. But that's my opinion.
No, I understand, and I'm not talking an indefinite. That's why I meant about a stopgap or something. Because really, we are, and I'm, these people are the middle, and we need the middle, and we need to come up with a way to entice them to support the movement, and that's going to include a little benevolence to their situation, whether we view them as unnecessary or not. The fact of the matter is it's going to be a close vote, and we need and want them.
I see a little bit different, I guess, than Chris, same but different. This gives us an opportunity to give an opportunity to the ones that are really good workers, because you're right, like there are hard workers in government. We also know that there's people in there who recognize the faults within government and are very frustrated that they can't fix them, that they can't fix what's wrong. I remember having a friend who worked for Service Canada, and she hated going to work every day because her hands were always tied when she couldn't help the people like she wanted to, even though the tools were supposed to be there for her to do that. And so I think what we could do is use a lot of those workers to our advantage in the new country of Alberta. So for example, how many of them work in the immigration department and pull their hair out every day because immigration is out of control, there's nothing they can do about it, they're supposed to be responsible for 50 people and they don't know where 30 of them are. Like, there's a problem, right? So we could take those folks who for the first time would be able to say, yeah, you know what, here were the gaps in that immigration plan that they had and in the program, let's build a better one. We already see the holes, let us help you fill the gaps. We could take those people and use them as an asset. Same thing for passports. We mentioned passports earlier. We could take those people, use them as an asset. There'd be people in there that help with trade, right? They help with what's coming in and what's going out. That's their role in the federal government. We could use them as an asset. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity within those offices for those people to transition over and work for a country that's actually worth working for, as opposed to one that doesn't appreciate anything about you and just pays you to shut up. Now that said, that also gives the opportunity that those who maybe are not those hard workers, I have heard the stories of a friend of mine had neighbors over last summer. They were sitting around the campfire having a beer, and the one who worked for CRA was absolutely delighted that she had maybe worked 4 hours that week working from home, right? Like, we don't need that. We don't need that. So this gives the opportunity to get rid of that, right? If she still wants her job, she can go live in another part of Canada and get paid over there. So I think we have a double opportunity. One is to kind of flush out the folks that we don't really want to pay, but we can't get rid of right now because we don't have the means to do that, to give them a pink slip and a severance pay and tell them to go. But the ones that have so much to teach us about what doesn't work and what doesn't work, we can bring them on and learn from them. We just have to make sure we identify who's who properly.
I have a two-part.
Just one second. I just want to be clear about something. I'm actually more concerned about the young family that works till July to pay taxes to pay for those people. That's where my concern lies. So there likely won't be a situation where I change my mind about that. I don't believe that families should struggle. Kids should not be able to buy or can't afford to buy homes because of the tax burden caused by over-bureaucracy. That's probably not going to change. But what I would say is nothing is going to happen instantly. This isn't going to be like and it's certainly not going to be a Chris Scott snaps his finger and this happens. This is going to be something that Albertans decide. Maybe Albertans decide we want to double our bureaucracy. I don't know. Maybe we celebrate too much after the successful referendum. Everybody's drunk and somehow we vote for more bureaucracy. Like it's not going to happen. But you get my point. Those folks, and they know who they are. The parasitic draw on our paychecks, the bureaucrats that parasitic draw on our paychecks, they know who they are. And I would say they have roughly 1 to 2 years notice right now. If Alberta really gets to work and we pull up our bootstraps or whatever it is, and we get to work removing the bloat, it's going to be a minimum of 1 year to 2 years before those people start losing their jobs. That's a lot of notice. And so I would say that that's a pretty compassionate thing that someone took the time to outline that so we can publicly say, you may be on notice and you should start either making yourself relevant and making yourself, valuable in that bureaucracy, or you should start planning for your future.
Just a couple of things. I can't see, like I said before, when companies merge, it usually results in a reduction of staff. We are effectively merging. What we're doing is we're merging federal responsibilities with provincial responsibilities. It's going to result in a need for fewer staff. That doesn't mean you have to be heartless about it. Those that are newly employed, they've already got their qualifications, they're talented, they have their education. Probably they can find a job in the private sector not without too much difficulty. Those that have been in the service for a significant amount of time, there are, like Chris says, there's separation law. They're required to receive X number of weeks of pay for every year that they've served. They're going to have quite a cushion. And like Chris says, they're going to have some time to look at where they go from this point to that point. It's not going to be a cruel "you're gone" today. It's going to be something that's managed and handled, I think, very effectively by assessment of what the needs are in order to fulfill the responsibilities of the bureaucracy for the new country of Alberta. And it's going to be done not necessarily with kindness, but certainly with fairness.
Sorry, I have one more thing. I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but it just occurred to me, how many federal workers were protesting policy that caused hundreds of thousands of jobs to flee from Alberta? I mean, we lost some of the biggest companies that the province has seen due to federal policy. Like, they just evaporated. And Canada is a great example. They employed thousands upon thousands of people and generated billions of dollars of revenue. And they left Alberta because the policies within Confederation from the federal government were so poor, so anti-energy, so anti-business that they chose not to be here anymore. And that's just one of dozens, if not hundreds, of examples where jobs evaporated overnight. Like,
$1 trillion over the last 10 years.
John says $1 trillion over the last 10 years of investment has fled Alberta. That translates into hundreds of thousands of jobs, right? So it is important to think of both sides of these, but I will always defer to the citizen, the people. The people who are paying the bills should be the ones that are thought about first and protected from that type of thing. And there was a question over here, Joe.
Yes, it's a two-part question. What do we know about the native land claims wanting their treaty rights and blocking the vote? And what will that look like for them going forward if Alberta does separate?
Well, I can tell you that the statistics they live under right now aren't good. They have a very stressed relationship with not only the provincial government but the federal government specifically. They're not actually blocking anything. There's a court challenge, and the question or the challenge is to block the proponent of a citizen initiated referendum, that's Mitch Sylvester, from completing the process. It's not the First Nations people that are doing that. It's the gatekeepers to the people that are doing that. It's people that benefit greatly from the status quo. And the status quo in Canada and in Alberta for First Nations people sucks. It is terrible. Treaty lands, the treaty boundaries specifically outline areas of land that specific groups of individuals agreed to cede permanently and forever in exchange for enumerated things. Reserves, medicine chests, education, territory rights to hunt, fish, gather, those types of things. Farming equipment, which they didn't get and just got a huge settlement for, although where's the money? It went to the gatekeepers, not the people. My point is, it's ridiculous. This whole notion that a group of people, and not to say that a small group shouldn't have a voice, but right now, 6%, First Nations people are about 6% of Alberta. Albertans, because they're Albertan too. It's not even that 6%. It's the small percent of the bureaucracy at the top of that group that's making all the noise. And there's even people, non-First Nations people, advocating to keep things the same for that group of people. And I like to ask them, why do you hate people that much? Why would you want to keep people in these situations? Have you driven past a reserve lately? Has anybody? I worked 20 years in the Alberta oil patch. I picked up many a roughneck on reserves, and there's always a nice part of the reserve. There's boats in the driveway, new black Suburbans in every single driveway, big houses, clean yards, and then there's the rest. Well, it's the people with the boats and the Suburbans that want to keep things the way they are. The other folks, man, I wrote an article. It's at whistlestoptruckstop.ca/blog. It's called Why First Nations Stand to Benefit Most from an Independent Alberta. Read that blog. Keep a tissue with you, because when you read the statistics with First Nations people under the status quo, it's going to tug on your heartstrings. And it should make you want to pursue change for them. However, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for First Nations groups to do one of a few things. Keep existing treaties. Those treaties have survived. They survived Confederation. They survived the British North America Act. They survived land transfers and sale by the Hudson's Bay Company to Ottawa. They survived Alberta Incorporation in 1905. The treaties survived the Land and Natural Resources Transfer Act in 1930. They survived the Constitution Act 1982. They survived all of these things, and they could continue to survive if the signatories, the parties to the treaties, agreed to. They could keep things the same if they wanted to. Their relationship with Ottawa, they could be little Canadian islands in the middle of a free and prosperous Alberta, or they could choose to renegotiate the treaties, maybe update them from the archaic versions that they are right now that reflected a better future for First Nations people. Or maybe they could say, Ottawa, give us this land, because they don't own it right now. Ottawa owns reserves. They don't own any of the land. And they could say, we want to be prosperous and move into a future of freedom and prosperity with the rest of Alberta as equal citizens with a seat at the table. It's up to them.
Many people don't realize what Chris just said, is that the reserves do not belong to the tribes. It's not their land. Those lands are held for the benefit of the tribe by the federal government. What that means in practice is that if you live on a reserve and you want a house, you go on bended knee to the chief and the council and say, could I have a house, please? And they may or may not say yes. And even if they say yes, if you have it for a couple of years and somebody's grandson gets to be 21 years old and starts to have children, you might be asked to move out so the grandson and his family can move in. They don't have any rights at all on the reserve, which is why so many of them work off the reserve, and which is why so many of them also have signed the petition for a referendum. There's been a lot of them. The way things are in the reserve right now, he talks about the good part over here and the bad part over there. When you look at the statistics, for example, for high school graduation for First Nations people in Canada, it says that 67% of them graduate from grade 12. But when you look a little bit deeper, 40% of them who live on the reserve graduate. 97% of them who live off the reserve graduate. What does that say about life on the reserve? They would be far better off saying, okay, let's sit down. We have the cushion of the existing treaty law, which cannot be abridged by anybody. Let's use that basis to negotiate a new deal with the new country of Alberta, where we may become citizens free, like the other citizens of Alberta, so we can get a mortgage and build a house, so we can own our own property. All of those things could happen for them if they so choose, but it's their choice.
To give people confidence in the process, any idea where Keith Wilson and company are in the transition documents and the transition planning and when they might be released?
The little circle on the screen is spinning, loading, loading, loading. It's in progress. You know, I actually had an idea on how, you know, what would benefit First Nations people, specifically that are living on reserve. What if they decided to renegotiate? And what if the land and houses on the reserves, the title went to the people that live there? What if every First Nations person, Treaty Indian in Alberta, what if they got a land and a piece of land and a house and it was theirs? And they could do what they wanted with it. It is likely that we would have to probably, you know, the government would probably have to buy some land, buy some houses, and be able to do that. But would that not be something that should benefit them? Like, why live under this colonial imposed imperialistic regime with gatekeepers instead of owning your property, taking pride in it, being able to get a loan against your house to start a business? Do you think that would encourage First Nations people to support a referendum on independence? If they could, for the first time in Canadian history, own the land that's on the reserves? That's possible. It's possible. But only if they pursue it.
Just bring the microphone, please. I can't hear on the stream.
Yeah, he said, look at the wacky process going on in BC. Yeah, BC's a little bit different. BC was basically settled by gold miners, gold rush. And it was so crazy in BC. The reason BC entered Confederation is because they were broke. They mismanaged, the gold ran out, whatever, and they were left with all this stuff they had to pay for, couldn't do it, brought into Confederation to settle debts, is the reality of it. They never bothered to negotiate anything with the Indians in BC. As a matter of fact, there was which group was it? It was in the interior. They actually had a bit of a war with the miners and the Indians because somebody did something to someone, they retaliated, and it just escalated to an outright war. And it was only through some master negotiation by what was that judge's name? I can't remember what his name was, very famous. But what I'm saying is it's a different scenario. Alberta, before Alberta was brought into Confederation, there was negotiating parties, which included Clifford Sifton and others, and they negotiated these agreements with the Indigenous people that were here. And these were people who were facing some very serious things, by the way. The buffalo was all but gone. They didn't farm. They were nomadic, they followed the food, the West was being settled, they had spent 200 years being decimated by disease. Like, things were not good for the groups that were here. And in the United States, only 150 years earlier, when the United States, when they wanted to open up the West, they sent groups in there and they put bounties on Indians. That's what they did. And the history books don't highlight this, but the crown, specifically the queen, actually said that she pitied what was happening to them. And when the West was settled in Canada, she actually referred to the indigenous groups here as Her Majesty's Indians. They wanted to do something to prevent the demise of the people that were here. They actually respected them. And so that was the idea of the reserve, was that we're going to give you some land where you can flourish. No one's going to interfere with you. We want to make sure your culture and everything can maintain and sustain. We're going to teach you how to farm. We're going to give you seeds. We're going to give you implements. We're going to give you medicine. We're going to give you schools so you can learn how to integrate into the new world that's popping up around you. It was a compassionate intervention, unlike what happened in the United States. And then comes the Indian Act. The Indian Act changed that from a soft landing pad or a safe haven, the reserves, to a cage. And it's been a cage for First Nations people ever since. And it's because our government, federal government, knows that when those people are in the cage, when those people are relying on the food box, the bread box, they're loyal. And they'll do things like stand up against freedom and prosperity through independence, right? It's all in that. I would encourage you, read that article, read that blog that I wrote about First Nations, why they would benefit the most, and send me a message if you agree or if you disagree. Maybe you think I got something wrong, but I firmly believe that independence has the best part of independence is potentially for First Nations people if they choose to pursue it.
I can tell you that from my perspective, the people in British Columbia who are of Aboriginal descent are really lucky that I'm not the Premier. Because the first thing I would have done was absolutely not accept UNDRIP. It wouldn't happen. The second thing I'd do is I'd say, wait a minute, the definition of a native is somebody who's born here. Doesn't matter about your ancestry, doesn't matter about your color. If you're born here, if you're a citizen, you're a native Canadian, and you have the same rights as every other native Canadian. As far as land negotiation is concerned, tough. It's over. It's done with. You're a citizen of British Columbia. You have no more and no less rights than any other citizen of British Columbia. That would be my position if I was the Premier of British Columbia. Unfortunately, we're so tied up in the idea that we should pay for generational guilt for things that didn't happen, that our government says, okay, we've got to do something for these poor guys, give them all sorts of money, land, this and that and the other. I don't agree with that, never have agreed with it, and I won't agree with it. I think that, we're all Canadians. We should all have the same rights. There should be no special categories. This is the most egregious example of what I talked about in my brief talk of separation by ancestry, color, and whatever. It creates groups of people who feel entitled and other groups of people who feel that they're missing something. And I pity the people in BC. I would like to see somebody strong enough to stand up and say, enough.
Well, he's mumbling about it now.
Good. I think we're done.
That looks like it's the end of the questions. Before we wrap up tonight, is there anybody that has any specific opposition or specific opposition points that are brought up in your day-to-day conversations that you want to talk about? Have you ever encountered someone that says, oh, you'll never be able to be an independent nation because of this?
I just get a lot of anger. And my posts in response is that they're just very angry people, and they call you names, and they will tell you you're a liar, but they don't have anything to say, well, this isn't a good idea because of this. They just say that they're just very angry and they try and berate you and degrade you. That's it.
Yeah, and that's true. The most difficult argument to overcome in the independence conversation is the emotional one, the patriotic one. And that's where you folks come in. We do these events and we talk to rooms full of people like you all the time, but the people that we can't reach are the people that aren't here. But they're people that are in your lives, right? So now, if you agree that we need to pursue this, your job, your task over the next few months, and actually forever now, be civically engaged, is to have those conversations with people that are already in your groups, where you're at, people that you have a relationship or some sort of trust built with. We can't reach them, but you can. So attend as many of these as you can, learn as much as you can, and bring these conversations back with you where you're at. That's how we win this, by getting to the people that aren't here. There's a interesting story about in World War II, they wanted to figure out how to better equip their bombers so they didn't lose so many airplanes. So they started looking at the bombers when they came home and okay, well, they're getting shot here. Look at all the bullet holes. We need to fix this. And then somebody had this bright idea. They said, wait a minute. We don't need to protect the spots on this airplane that have bullet holes in them because they came home. We need to protect the areas of this airplane that don't have bullet holes because the ones that got shot there never came home. We don't need to convince you folks of this conversation. We need to encourage you folks to go and get to the areas of the airplane that we can't reach. Kind of a bad analogy, but I really like airplanes. So that's the best you get.
As long as they don't have holes in them.
As long as they don't have holes in them. So that's what Let's Talk Alberta is about. It's about us up here talking with you, and then you taking this conversation back with you and talking about these things like civilized human beings where you're at. And if we can do that, we got basically 5 months until we get a vote. We have a really, really good chance of winning it. And in winning it, it's not just winning a referendum. This is winning a new opportunity, an opportunity that some people have, they've waged war for. They've died and bled for. And all we have to do is talk to each other. And vote. So, let's talk, Alberta.
So I would like to thank you very much for coming here. So thank you for the speakers today. That was amazing to see them because we traveled all the way. Last week we were very far the south, so that's kind of cool to see. So that concludes the speeches for today. I want to thank all the people who are watching online as well too. I think they're going to be in Forestburg tomorrow, is that right?
Yes.
Forestburg tomorrow at the community center at 5:30 for another round of pierogies. Oh, I said pierogies again.
Yeah, we just like pierogies.
Pierogies. And on Thursday in Lloydminster, I will be streaming that event as well too. So they have Tyner Day and Leighton Gray. So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.